All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our inaugural episode of our podcast, Plays Well with Others. I'm Andrew Moore. I am currently serving as a VP of software engineering with a nationwide retail lender, mortgage lender. And I've got a background, as mile wide as you can imagine with every industry under the sun, whether it be manufacturing, advertising, military contracting, etc. And this has been a brainchild of mine for the better part of 10 years, and it's taken a few different looks, and we're finally here. We're finally birthing something into the ether. So appreciate all the support. I think at one point I even had written and recorded my own promo music. Obviously that didn't make it to this iteration. But I am joined by my esteemed co-host Jess Agnew.
Hi, I am also a VP at a nationwide bank. I'm really excited to be here. I've held roles in business analysis, project management, product ownership, product management for well over a decade. I've had the opportunity to go through many agile transformations, a digital transformation or two. I've had the opportunity to build a project management office from scratch as well as a product division from scratch. So a lot of these topics that we're going to be talking about here are very near and dear to my heart, things that I've experienced and, battles I've fought and sometimes won and sometimes left, with more knowledge.
Not so much, right? So let's talk about the name of this podcast, Plays Well with Others. So the name came to me several months back under the guise of thinking through a few different concepts around organizational leadership and technology. And the thought occurred to me, Jess and I have worked together for coming on 10
Yeah,
years, right?
a long time.
And so we started out as what I jokingly say baby team lead, baby product owner.
Just
We
fresh
were
faced.
very new. Right, right. We were very new. We had never built a team per se, and we'd never really gone through the process of standing up an effective agile organization. And so over the 10 years, we've come to a lot of the same conclusions because we've had shared experiences.
Absolutely.
And so as I was thinking through how you replicate that, because it's not very common that, well, I say it's not common. It's not been my experience that product organizations and engineering organizations are always so tightly coupled.
Yeah.
So what I'm endeavoring to do here is kind of expose some of the secret sauce. How did we go about building organizations that collaborated very well, but then on top of that, as you expand out beyond your standard engineering and product organizations, how do you build full technology, full companies that are so naturally cohesive and naturally digital that you really see the value out of what we've historically called digital transformation?
Yeah. And the point that I really think is really important that you're making there, and it's really poignant as we talk about this with all the different guests we're going to have, is that the digital transformation is not just about technology. A lot of times you think of digital technology or digital transformation, you think technology. Anything you read online, though, will tell you, oh, it's technology and culture. But culture is kind of a indeterminate thing. How do you build culture? Well, it's not culture necessarily, it's people, right? It's how you're interacting with each other, it's how you're setting your teams up to succeed within this transforming environment that you're trying to build. And I do remember when we were fresh faced baby product owner, baby team lead, all those years ago. I was brand new at product ownership. I really, had just gone through all the training, had just, gotten my wings and been told I knew what I was doing and sent out into the world to build a product. And I remember going into a room and bringing Andrew with me to talk to some very important stakeholders that we had, very, um, driven stakeholders that we had. And it really was a turning point in my understanding of what a product development relationship could be. And it was all about breaking down the walls, making sure that you were working collaboratively as a team, not, okay, well, I'll take this back and give it to them, and then they'll take it and give it to them, and they'll do this and then take it to them. It was about coming together and trying to find a path forward with shared knowledge and shared experience.
Yeah, and that's when we talk about digital transformation, excuse me, the traditional view, and I say traditional, digital transformation's a newer concept. I say newer, but within the last handful of years anyway. Yeah. And it's become more of a buzzword. And personally, I don't want to say I take issue with the phrase, but for me, the phrase transformation, digital transformation, implies this long-standing waterfall type project. And we're saying that on the front end, I want to be digital, and in order to be digital, it's going to take me 5 years, 10 years to fully be digital, and then I'll figure out what we do next. Maybe it's quantum transformation after that. Who knows? I'm sure we'll come up with a word for it. But in my mind, and part of what led to the name Plays Well with Others was this idea that I don't want to embark on a transformation. I want to embark on a journey that takes a lot of the same agile practices. Let's make changes as they're needed, when they're needed, and get value out of them quickly, so that we're having a conversation that's more driven towards our ultimate business goals. And so the Plays Well with Others mindset is, we started out with product and engineering because that's my background, that's Jess's background, and it's been there's been pain in product and engineering relationships. But then as you expand to operations, infrastructure, these more abstract teams, it becomes much more important that we define the relationship. And hence the Plays Well with Others name.
I feel like you should introduce our third co-host for the evening.
Yep. So, yes, I have to be honest with you. If you're following my personal LinkedIn, you'll see the video that I've got scheduled soon, or by the time this comes out, it will have already happened. We tried recording this podcast once already today, and
we have succeeded.
We learned the hard way. We did. It was a great episode. We got my audio and my video, and none of Jess's, because I didn't read the manual and reasons, etc. But so now it is much later in the day. It's now much later in the day, and we've reached the witching hour in which my German Shepherd is barking at everything in the world outside.
It's important.
Not a great lead.
She works through this, though. It's okay. She's contributing.
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
Yes, it's not a great play for the inaugural episode. I promise I am good at recording things, but we've got 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3, we'll say.
So hopping back into the digital transformation, I'm curious what your thoughts are on why a digital transformation might fail. I mean, if you Google the success rates of digital transformation, the numbers aren't necessarily fantastic on how often they succeed. What do you think is causing that?
Well, so I'll start with the Weasley answer, right? So if you define a waterfall project and you know exactly what success looks like long term, then with a digital transformation, it's the core component of digital transformation is people. It's changing culture, it's changing personalities, and often this is long-standing culture.
Yeah.
And so if you define what success is and you define it so tightly that you're going to be upsetting a lot of apple carts over the years. So after several years have gone by, success probably isn't going to look the same as it did
when you
started.
Yeah.
And maybe there are KPIs out there that you could have better understood or better defined that allow you to iterate over the course of several months, several years, that become more logical.
Mm-hmm.
And success is a fluctuating thing. So you get to good, but if you define that up front, you don't know what you don't know yet.
Yeah.
So I think by and large, digital transformation doesn't succeed initially because success is a hard thing to define before you know what truly digital looks like.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you're embarking, on this digital transformation. But if you do convert that mindset to thinking of it as a journey that you're going on with your team, then it becomes less of, okay, here's a destination and here's, one unrealistic goal, one unrealistic timeline after another that we're going to, force you to hit, and we're going to do rapid fire changes to make these things fit. But if instead you convert your mindset to, okay, we're embarking on a journey together. These are the practices we're putting into place. We're looking at our technology and trying to better understand how we can bridge the gap between what we're doing and what we want to be doing, and how can we use technology to make that conversion. But we're also looking at how are we incorporating the team members that have these innovative ideas that we're missing out on because we're excluding them from the conversation, or how are we better passing things from the development team that builds the product to the operations team who supports the product. And how are we making sure that they're speaking to each other and they have a cohesive understanding of what they're doing and why. So it really is an interesting concept that you brought up there, Andrew, because it's not just, if you talk about it as a transformation and this waterfall project, you're trying to hit a goal. Well, your goals are already unrealistic when you set them because you don't know what your journey is going to look like. But if you convert that, you have a better pathway to moving forward.
Right. And you touched on a few, at least 3 beer conversations, let's be honest. So one, DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. So to be truly digital, I've seen organizations approach digital transformation as, well, now we have this business unit over here, call it, innovation or optimization or whatever. We have this business unit over here that's by nature untechnical. They're going to be driving the application of technology now. And that's digital transformation for some companies. And for others, I've seen it be, okay, we're going to fork off this skunkworks technology team, and they're going to be focused on delivering new innovative technologies. And both of those, I would argue, are half-baked. Mm-hmm. They're not bad ideas on their face, but because you have siloed that innovation, you lose out on, like you said, the value that comes from diversity of thought. Yeah. And I'm not going to get too far into it because there's almost certainly another episode here, but DEI is so important, not just from a demographic perspective, but also just from a ability for everyone to be equitable and included and driving towards the same goal, regardless of what your base skill set is. Mm-hmm. Right. And the other thing you mentioned, which is again probably another episode related to well, there it's such an interesting conversation to talk about digital transformation because
so
in order to do it well, right, in order to do it well, you have to first focus on people. Yeah. Like we said earlier, it's a people challenge more so than it is a technology challenge. That's the easy part.
I like that phrase. It's a people challenge more than a technology challenge.
That's largely what it always is, right? Like the technology is always changing. Yeah. There's always new technology, and people are always part of the equation. How we get value out of ourselves, the meaty part of of the digital aspect is the fun part, because how I use, let me date this podcast, how I use Chat GPT or how I use machine learning, that's where things get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why digital is important. Not because of any newfangled technology. It's about how I use the technology to really meet some goal and how I use that technology to drive my mission forward.
So I'm going to do a little bit of a geeky and kind of idea here, but if you've ever read Ender's Game, there, and I'm spoiling it for you if you have not, so just, it's really old though. I mean, come on guys, like, fine.
You've seen the movie anyway.
Oh, don't watch the movie. Anyways, so if you've seen Ender's Game, at the end, you find out that the reason that Ender was successful was because, he could move as quickly as the, buggers that he was fighting, right? He could move as quickly as them. They had one central intelligence, though. So they had one smart person solving all the problems. And in Ender's world, he had trained so excessively with his team, and they knew each other so well, and they shared ideas with each other so well, that he could move just as rapidly, but every single person was an individual person who could make good choices, who could make innovative choices within the moment, who could have a revolutionary idea and change the battle. And I think that is kind of an idea that I really underpins what we're talking about here when it comes to how people can impact your digital transformation. If they're all on the same page, if everybody's working towards these goals together, if everybody knows the roadmap and knows what's happening, every person can make smart, innovative decisions in their everyday life, and they can bring their expertise to the table. Like Andrew's talking about, you have these diverse viewpoints that come from all these different areas and all these different backgrounds, and each one can contribute something incredibly helpful that nobody else would have because of their unique viewpoint.
Well, so that's a beautiful segue into the core of why we're doing this podcast. So like I said, my background's software engineering, but I've worked as an IT operations leader, IT infrastructure, DevOps, etc. And as a result, I've had a exposure to a lot of different practices within technology. And that puts me in this mindset of understanding kind of the wide breadth of what we can do as technologists. And I'm always surprised, I shouldn't be at this point, but I'm always surprised when there are people within technology that don't know what another practice does. Yeah. Not even, even at a high level. As a good example, I've met developers that are very much, and no criticism meant, but are very much IDE developers. Mm-hmm. I write code very well. I solve problems with code. But when it comes down to infrastructure, understanding web servers or web services, that's not my expertise. Yeah. And so that puts those people in a position where I don't know how to appreciate another team within technology. Mm-hmm. And when you don't know what skills your cohorts bring to the table, that makes it hard to trust. Mm-hmm. It makes it hard for me to know that they've got my back because I don't know what they do. And part of what I want to do with this podcast is bring those functions, those roles, those people to the table, and not only let them explain what they do, because we all have parts of our job that are just day to day, like keep the lights on work, that if somebody asks us at a cocktail party or whatever, what do you do? That's not probably not what we're going to bring up. Right. But there's always something that is what gets us up in the morning. Yeah. The thing that is really impactful. And if you ask a software developer or an engineer, hey, what's the cool part about your job? You could get any number of different answers, but a lot of it is going to be, I allow people to do their jobs better, or I provide some impact to whatever
That
industry you're in,
intrinsic
healthcare,
motivation for
finance.
you to do your job. What brings you to the table? What inspires you?
Right. Right. And when I ask a developer, hey, what is this infosec engineer? What's their job? What do they bring to the table? You're not going to get the same answer. You're going to get the answer of the day-to-day stuff that the infosec engineer doesn't find exciting.
Right.
But if you ask the infosec engineer, what is it that they do? You know, you've seen the movie Hackers, right? It's like we're fighting evil. And
What a life
that's why this is
description.
cool because right, because everybody has their
Mm-hmm.
thing. And in order to be really digital, and this is whether it be a technology organization, a standard business, whatever, in order to be truly digital, everybody has to be able to showcase their wares.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to bring that passion to the table, not just for my employment, not just because it's what I get paid to do, but it's why we're here. And you throw CEO, president, owner, whatever, throws the gauntlet down and says this is the goal for 2023. Everybody should have an opportunity to say this is where my passion plugs into that goal.
That's another really good phrase. This is how my passion plugs into that goal. If your team can't answer that question while you're doing a digital transformation, you fundamentally, missed out on an opportunity to really engage them and get them successful and get them contributing to the ultimate goal. I really like that phrase.
Exactly. And so looking forward in this podcast, I've already had some really interesting conversations with upcoming guests and potential guests. The idea here is not to make this a technology podcast because there are plenty of those that already do a really good job of encapsulating what it is to be a technologist in 2023. What I want to bring to the table is the opportunity for people of all walks of life, of all disciplines, to sit down and talk about what is it that makes their job important? What's their passion? And how does that plug into the the generic company at large? How do we take that discipline and really capitalize on it to find new product lines, to build efficiency, to improve the bottom line? How do we make our businesses more successful by truly applying passionate individuals and passionate disciplines as opposed to checking boxes for we have these things already?
Yeah. And you mentioned your unique
And
perspective of kind of having seen this from a couple of different areas. And I think that, having kind of gone to a couple of different companies together now, we've seen how those relationships work. And there are some fundamental truths on how you can build teams together. There's sometimes this natural ability that humans have to bond during challenging or hard situations. And this is an opportunity to do that. You're doing a digital transformation. It's going to be challenging. So how are you, instead of driving your team apart, increasing, the exodus out of your company because it's challenging? How are you instead pulling your teams together, having them take this opportunity to bond together and build out that intrinsic motivation that they figured out because they learned how to plug in to the message. They learned how to plug into the larger goal as a whole, and they now have something that they know that they're contributing to the organization. They're a part of something bigger than themselves.
exactly. And we've all seen it. I can guarantee you just about everybody listening to this has seen how this plays
Mm-hmm.
out in one way or the other, where you have a team that's largely focused on support, whether it be end user support or internal engineering support or whatever, that's getting inundated with requests because CEO says we have to undergo a digital transformation, which means I have to do more work, which means you have to do more work, which means you have to do more work.
Talking
And
about how
it
things
turns
fail,
out,
that's a good example.
right. Well, it turns out very quickly because none of us are on the same
Mm-hmm.
team. We're all trying to maintain queues and SLAs and work. We get frustrated with each other. We get combative. We get irritated, and we get
Mm-hmm.
burnout. when in reality, in talking about how to successfully start digital transformation or digital journey or whatever you want to call it, if we take that first step by saying, look, we may not all sit in the same room on a day-to-day basis, but we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your day-to-day work looks like. We're all here not because we are a DevOps engineer, because we're a software engineer, because we're an operations engineer or an infrastructure, whatever, product manager, whatever. That's not why we're here. We're here because the business is successful,
And you're not
and we
here
want to
to
make
close
it
a
more
ticket,
successful.
right? Like that's not, you're
Right.
not here just to
Right.
close your ticket. You're here, we fail or we succeed as a team.
Exactly. And that's, we say that in agile scrum teams, we succeed and fail as a team, but sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, it's bigger than that.
It is.
It's levels of granularity. And kind of the closing thought here for this episode is this is just a taste, right? So we touched on a lot of three pipe problems,
And we're going to unpack
to borrow the Sherlock phrase,
as we go forward.
and we're gonna disagree, and we're gonna find different perspectives, and we're gonna get people on that have visceral reactions to some of this, because Jess and I have been through it, and some of it, you still get the flashbacks at 2 a.m. But
just occasionally, it's fine.
the hope here is not that we're going to produce this content and put it to bed, in the same way that we are taking into consideration all of the nuances of implementing digital transformation. We want to get feedback. So please share, rate, tell your friends, tell your family, whatever.
Start a petition.
Get this podcast out there.
Transformation to digital journey. We can do that too.
Right. There's a LinkedIn poll, I'm sure. But let's get this out there so that not only are we producing content and getting feedback from guests and other industry leaders, but also we're building community around this, so that we can talk with each other. What's worked, what hasn't worked, what's TBD, right? So
and respond directly
looking
to
long
things
term,
that you're dealing with in your organizations. You have, specific situations that you want to talk through. We want to be a part of that with you and go on that, journey as a collective.
Yeah, and help cater some of our content with what you're seeing in real life. Because what we dealt with in 2019 is not the same thing we're dealing with in 2023. Lord, we've all seen it. 2019 was a vastly different year than this year.
Yeah, that change happened rapidly.
It sure did. But this has been our first episode, and our hope here was to expose some of the ideas that we've been kicking around and set up a lot of conversations to come in the next weeks and months and ongoing. So would love to get your feedback, would love to hear what you think. Again, rate, share, make this discoverable for other people so that we can grow this community and really support each other through what I'm sure is going to be a very interesting set of years in the digital transformation world.
Absolutely.